So you're thinking about buying a home in Aledo, Texas, and are not quite certain what your budget will get you in the Aledo area? Well, you're in luck today because I'm going to show you 3 different homes in 3 different neighborhoods at 3 different price points. But what holds them all together is that they're all within spitting distance of each other, and they're all within 1,500 feet of Vandergrift Elementary. You can almost see every home from each home that we're going to be at. So all these homes are just south of downtown. I am in downtown Aledo right now. I'm on Front Street. Wanted to point out Aledo Diner over here, and then Two Sisters Tea House, 2 of my favorite spots on Front Street. My wife particularly loves Two Sisters Tea House, where you can get some really great specialty teas. So if you are thinking about Aledo and you are not certain what your budget can buy, stick around. I'm going to show you everything from the 300s all the way up to the 800 range, different sizes, different lot sizes, different neighborhoods, but all within, like I said, 1,500 feet of each other. And if you're interested in a great lunch place, stick it around to the end. I'm going to show you my favorite lunch spot, one of my favorite lunch spots in the Aledo area, definitely my favorite sandwich space. And now, if this is your first time on the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in Aledo, Texas, make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap that bell for notifications so you can be the first to know about what's going on in the Aledo market. My name's Jared with Living in Aledo, and I get calls and texts all the time from people just like you who are thinking about making their move to the Aledo area, and I love it. So whether you're thinking about moving next week or next year, all my contact information is in the description box below, so reach out however you feel most comfortable, and I'd love to make this transition as smooth as possible. Okay, everybody, so we are in Villages of Aledo, which is just south of downtown Aledo. I'm talking like a mile or 2. This is Aledo proper, and guys, you're not gonna find many neighborhoods like this in Aledo anymore. So this is one of the very few neighborhoods that you can get a home for under $400,000 in Aledo ISD. Like a brick, good construction home. You wanna buy a mobile home? Cool, I'll help you out. We can get you under 400. But this home right here we're looking at, it's actually currently priced at $368. It is just over 1,700 square feet. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1999 build. So as you look around, you can see that this neighborhood actually has some pretty good trees, pretty mature stuff, which you don't get in the new construction neighborhoods, right? Like Parks of Aledo, Walsh, Morningstar, none of those neighborhoods have the mature trees, and it's just because of what the developer had to do to get all the homes in there. So these aren't huge lots. These are kind of typical traditional late 90s, early 2000 lots. You're looking at, you know, maybe 0.2 acres plus or minus, depending on the lot and the location and whether or not you're in a cul-de-sac or whatnot. So this is a good entry-level price point. Young family. Honestly, guys, this home is owned by an investor, which actually brings me to a really important point. These homes are hard to come by in Aledo. Anything under 500. Honestly, the average price of the sold home in Aledo last year was $698,000. So you're well below the average price point in Aledo. This home is currently leased, and you think, oh man, well, I want to buy a home for myself. Well, the lease expires end of June, which gets pretty close even if you were trying to move in right away. But if you are a little bit flexible, conventional loans will allow you to let someone stay in a home for up to 60 days after closing. So you could still contract on this with a tenant in it. You could close on this with a tenant in it, and then the tenant would move out in under 60 days. Everything would be allowable for the loan. You'd still qualify for an owner-occupied loan type and not have to, do an investor loan. So the big benefit of the owner-occupied loans is that you can put on a conventional loan as little as 5, sometimes 3. I've heard of people doing 0% down. Typically it was 5% was minimum. And then FHA and VA loans are different as well. I'll post a video on that soon, some of the different loan types you can use out here. But one of the other neat things, like I said, we're super close to downtown Aledo, but we're also within 1,500 feet of Vandergrift Elementary. And then you've got Bearcat Park right across the way. So, I mean, literally it's walking distance. You would have to cross 1187, I think. Maybe it's FM5, depending on where we're at. You would have to cross that, but it's definitely walking distance. So if you're looking for something at a super reasonable price point, guys, $368 for over 1,700 square feet, that's like $214 a square foot. You're not gonna beat something like this in Aledo. So let's check out the neighborhood and then we'll go to house number 2. Okay, we're at neighborhood number 2, looking at house number 2. This home is listed at $549,900, so basically $550,000. It is almost 3,000 square feet. It's 29 and change, and it is a 4-bed, 2.5 bath. So that's putting it like a 187 a square foot. Hopefully I got that right. Now this is actually in a Villages of Aledo section as well. It's a different phase. Try and get away from that dog barking at us. And these homes are built in the late 90s again, late 90s, early 2000s. That home specifically is on an acre. So, which you're like $550 on an acre, 3,000 square feet is awesome. In some neighborhoods, that's gonna run you $750. The reason it's not is because the rest of this neighborhood is really, it's like 0.3 to 0.5 acres. And you just don't get the same value when you have an oversized lot in the neighborhood. So this neighborhood's gonna run that 550 plus or minus range. Now, some important, maybe details about this neighborhood that I actually like is there's a creek that runs through it. So actually, you can see some green space right over here. And I'm gonna walk over here. There's actually a little park as well. I think it's like Butterfly Park. It was done by a local Boy Scout. I think it was probably an Eagle Scout project. But there's a creek that runs through the neighborhood, so lots of green space. Again, you're seeing mature trees, stuff you're not gonna see in any of the new construction neighborhoods. And then there's also the Clear Fork Trinity on the outside of the neighborhood. It kind of backs up. So one important thing to know is that some of these lots, the larger lots, there's a couple like 0.6, they back up and the back of the lot is in the flood zone. And that's actually not anything to be concerned about as long as the flood zone doesn't come up to your actual structure of your home. So those homes would not be required to have flood insurance by their lender, but it's good to know that you're near a flood zone because you could choose to buy flood insurance as an extra precaution. So I actually have one of my clients, has worked for FEMA, has done a ton of the flood stuff, the flood maps, the elevations, and all this stuff. A super smart guy, worked for multiple different federal organizations. Don't hold it against him. But he's told me about some of this stuff, and sometimes these flood maps are not dated recently. So even though you're not required to get flood insurance, he said sometimes it's actually a really good idea if you're close to a flood zone to get the cheap flood insurance, just in case. So if you have any specific flood zone questions, I'd love to talk to you about them. I always love learning something new. I learned something new on a recent transaction. The developer had brought really, a lot of the neighborhood had originally been in the flood zone, and the developer raised the lots, so brought in fill, raised the lots so that the ground was now out of what was considered the flood zone. But the maps weren't updated on the FEMA website, so we just had the FEMA document. So we thought, well, let's get a survey. My client, we thought that would be a good idea. What we didn't realize, and this is what I learned, is that a normal survey, they do not take elevations to confirm anything. They just take the dimensions of the property and the measurements, and then they relied on the FEMA documentation we gave them. And we were able to determine that yes, everything was good and we were fine. But it was a little bit stressful because the first time the survey came back, it looked like we were in the flood zone. But that's because they didn't have the documentation, and the online maps they typically rely on had not been updated yet. So good, neat neighborhood. Again, it is Villages of Aledo like the last one, but it's a different phase. So larger homes, higher quality construction, larger lots, but again, about the same time frame, late 90s, maybe some early 2000s in here, and really a pretty cool spot. So if you're looking to be in town, close to the high school, and you're wanting to stay under 600, this is gonna be a good spot to look because there's just not a whole lot. So nice homes. And again, you're right across the way from Bearcat Park and Vandergrift Elementary. Okay guys, we are at the last stop of the day, house number 3. We are in the Stone Bluff neighborhood in Aledo. Now this home is literally between the other 2 homes, just on the other side of the street. So like I said, all these homes are within like 1,500 feet of each other, like linear distance from each other, not size-wise. But this is the largest home. It is the most expensive home we're gonna look at today. So this is a 3,800 square foot home, 5-bed, 4-bath. It is listed at $789,000, and it has a pool. So homes with pools are demanding higher price points in Aledo. They are going faster. There is another home in the neighborhood. So both these homes listed within a day or 2 of each other. So this one's 3,800 square feet, priced at $789,000. That's a little over $200 a square foot. I think it's like $202, which is kind of what you expect because this home is on an acre. So this neighborhood, Stone Bluff, they are all on almost exactly an acre, right at an acre. The other home is in the high 600s, so it's probably smaller. I didn't look it up for the video. But one important thing to note is, as the name might suggest, Stone Bluff, some of this neighborhood, it's literally two streets. It's like Creek View and Bluff View, I think, is the 2 streets. So the northern street on the northeast side, so these lots over here are all really pretty flat, very usable acres, so it's great. Over here, the front of these yards on this side of the street are all pretty flat, but what I noticed is that the back sides start to drop off because Creek View, so that's the other street. It's kind of like one big U, but it's 2 streets. Creek View, both sides of that street, the lots are very sloped, so they're tiered. In one way or another, they're worked into the side of the hill, the bluff. And so that's kind of a negative in the fact that you might own an acre, but you don't have an acre of usable space. But you still get an acre. So you are gonna pay a little higher premium on these. A little more mature neighborhood, you do see some nice, good-sized trees. Again, these are built around 2000 plus or minus. And you're walking distance to Bearcat Park, which is right over there. You don't have to cross the street either, which is a major plus. And then Vandergrift Elementary. You wouldn't want your kids to walk on their own, like you could walk with them, but that's a pretty busy street over here. So yeah, I wouldn't send my kids to walk to themselves, but you could, if they were older, or walk on your own. One thing about this house that I wanted to point out is, you might not have seen, I've had a lot of clients ask questions. This home is being put on an auction site. So it's listed with a real estate agent on our MLS, but you have to bid on it on an auction site. And unfortunately, the auction site was terrible. I could not even pull up the home completely. The search feature didn't work. It crashed the web browser 3 times. And oftentimes what these auction sites do is they charge the buyer a premium. And you're like, well, what's a premium, Jared? It's a way to offload a lot of the seller's expenses onto the buyer. And they do it by getting them on an auction site. They get excited, they're bidding like eBay. And you know, your offer, maybe they listed at $789, but they start the bidding at $600. So you're bidding and it goes up and up and up, and you're like, okay, we're at 650, 675, we're at 700, we're at 715, we're at 720. And you're like, okay, great, I won the house for 720, but it was listed at 789, I just got a great deal. What they get you with is that I've seen buyer premiums as high as 10%. So what that means is they add a 10% premium on top of your winning bid. So I'm gonna do some rough math. If you won at 720, 10% of that is $72,000. Now that's 792. You actually paid 792 for the home that was listed at 789 and you thought you were getting a deal. That varies. You need to look into it. You see what it does. Honestly, I don't love these sites. They don't work very well. And it doesn't seem to benefit the buyer in any way. If I was a seller and I could get the buyer to pay all my closing costs and pay all the commissions and I could walk away with more money, great, I'm happy to do it. But for the buyer, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So thanks for listening to that. Sorry, a little bit of a rant. We are in Stone Bluff. You are looking at homes in this neighborhood, high 600s to maybe 800-ish, depending on the size. Again, super close to downtown Aledo. We are in Aledo proper. So these are all existing homes built in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for sticking around and getting this tour de Aledo. Okay, so that's a wrap for our tour of Aledo today. Thanks for sticking with me. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I did want to show you one of my favorite places to grab lunch. So if you're in the area and you're in the mood for a sandwich, a hot or cold, yesterday's sandwich shop is great. It's become one of my favorite places, not only because their sandwiches are good, but because they're super reasonably priced. So for lunch, you can do the brown bag special. It's $10. It comes with a drink, a sandwich, and chips. And if you want, you can add a dessert for an extra $1, so like a brownie or a cookie. So don't let the name fool you. They're not serving yesterday's sandwiches, as I had no idea what the name was about the first time I heard it, but it's really good. I enjoy it. Everyone who works here is super great. It's also can get very busy in this parking lot, so maybe try coming a little bit early or coming a little bit late like I'm doing right now. Which is allowing me to sit out on their small little patio all by myself and record this. So thanks for checking it out. Thanks for learning more about Aledo today. If you have a question about any specific neighborhoods, feel free to comment in the comments below. And remember, whether you're thinking about moving next week or next year, all my contact information is in the description box below. So feel free to reach out however you are comfortable, and I'd love to help make this transition as smooth as possible.